Hello, and welcome to today's webinar, Stonyfield's Product Carbon Footprint Journey. Thank you for joining us today. Tutors is delighted to have with us Mary Fischer to share Stonyfield's story. Now, we actually begin with the presentation. I'm going to give a few technical instructions for the webinar. Now, if any problems with the technology or audio, please use the chat box on the right-hand side to send a message. Host from the drop-down menu, your message, and get back to you. We need you to ask questions throughout the presentation and hold a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. To type your question, go to the Q&A box on the bottom right-hand side of your screen, type question, and then press send. Now, to connect through your phone, please use the chat box to contact me for more details. So, with that out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Mary. Mary?
Yeah. Everyone. Thanks, Vanessa, and hello to everyone on the phone. I don't know about you, but I'm a huge fan of 2 degrees, and I'm delighted to be able to give this today. Today I'm going to be talking about our enterprise product carbon footprint journey. We've basically done a huge effort over the past year to do a company-wide product-level carbon footprint and implement it through enterprise resource management software. And I'm going to talk about our journey today, how we were doing our carbon footprinting before, how we transitioned to the new system, and what our lessons learned are that I'm passing on to you. If you are not familiar with Stonyfield, we were founded in 1983 with an environmental mission, and that mission basically embodies the fact that business can be sustainable and profitable. In fact, Stonyfield started as an environmental education school on a farm, and to kind of tap on their efforts, Jim Hirschberg and Sam Kamen, the original founders of Stonyfield, began making yogurt as a nutritious and delicious way to the world that organic milk is for you. Today we've to almost 500 employees, and we make approximately 120,000 tons of different products every year, not just yogurt now. We have ice cream, frozen yogurt, milk, half and half, all sorts of products. In fact, we're the nation's leading organic yogurt maker, and years ago, we joined with Fruit Danone in France. So, in fact, Dan in the U.S. is one of our sister companies, and in UK and in France. And there are over 100 business units are our kind of business siblings. And each of those business units has a carbon master. I'm a carbon master. The manager of sustainability is Dan and is a carbon master. The ones who are responsible for our carbon footprinting work at our business level and reporting that up to Danone every year. So just to take and explain how sustainability is deployed in our organization, I wanted to talk about our MAP program. That's Mission Action Program. The mission with 4 points at Stonyfield: healthy food, healthy people, healthy planet, and healthy business. And MAP is the way that we deploy our Healthy Planet mission throughout our organization. Everything from what we call our upstream impacts, so everything on the farm for our milk and our ingredients and our packaging. Manufacturing organization, we have MAP operationalized in a manufacturing pillar where we cover green chemistry, water, our facility, greenhouse gas emissions, and our waste. And downstream, after our product leaves our plants, we cover transportation, and we cover internal operations and basically how Stonyfield employees walk the talk. So all of our sustainability efforts, including the carbon footprinting, touch all of these different groups within the organization. I wanted to talk also about our history of environmental accounting, because carbon footprinting is by no means the only way that we account for environmental impacts at Stonyfield. In fact, we did tracking our key environmental impacts back in 1992 when most companies never even heard of tracking environmental impact. We started doing third-party eco audits in 1994. The first footprint of our energy usage at our facility was done in 1996. Our first product carbon footprint done in 1999. We started doing life cycle assessments of packaging back early in the 2000s. And most importantly, what I'm going to be talking about today is our use of our carbon footprinting tool that was developed by a group Danone, and it's Danprint. And I'm going to explain how Danprint transfers into our enterprise resource management database into what we call the SAP carbon tool today. So we've been doing carbon footprinting since about 2007, and now it's the next evolution. So what is Danprint? Danprint is an Excel model. It's basically a model that was built internally by Group Danone that covers the life cycle of a product. It refers to PAS 2050 and ISO 14044 rules. It was viewed, the methodology was peer reviewed by PwC, the Carbon Trust, the Environmental Ministry, and basically what we've been doing since 2007 is taking a subset product and using the Excel model to kind of model the majority or one product from every family. So, for example, if I have a 32-ounce stiff yogurt, I would model that, plus a 4-ounce version, plus a 5.3-ounce version, whatever different formats and different types of yogurt we may have, we model one of them. And then we extrapolate that out into our entire portfolio of products to get our best estimate of what our entire product footprint is for our company. So it's basically it's a good estimation. It's a very detailed estimation. Unfortunately, it can be very onerous, and I put the screen moment here because I would be lying if I said that this was an easy process. Basically, you know, we have twice a year we have to deal with these very large 7 MB files. Those of you who are familiar with Excel know that's a huge file, a very complicated file, and it's also difficult to find your mistakes in a file like this because there's not really much built in terms of checking our data. So Danone had been planning for a long time to get away from this Excel version and move to something that was going to be more accurate and easier for each company to deal with. So why even do it in the first place? I mean, Danone has business units all over the world, and a huge consumer demand in most countries for a product carbon footprint, even the information to be made available to them. We at Stonyfield certainly support the passage of that information onto consumers, but we can't make them care. So basically, the push, one of the biggest pushes to Danone for moving to this new software is a group of laws called Brunel 2. Many of you might be familiar with this law. It typically requires companies to report on their environmental and social performance, including all of their subsidiaries. And it applies to in France, but I'm sure, as you know, there are similar laws away in the UK, I believe in Japan, South Korea, California. So it isn't the only country with movements along these lines, but really the first to pass a law. And of course, since Danone is based in France, this is a huge push for them. I put a cartoon here just because I think it's funny. It basically says, carbon tax, help us, we're being governed by hippies. I tend to agree with the law, but I just think this is a funny way of making light of it, and maybe some people in France feel this cartoon. So 2010, Danone basically approached Stonyfield and all of their other business units and said, look, we have devised a new tool with SAP, SAP is the Enterprise Resource Management software. They're quite popular around the world. And they worked with SAP for 2 years to develop a new tool. And they said, look, we can use fewer users. We can include all of our materials and products. We don't have to enter nearly as much data manually. We will need less person time per year. We can report better. We can do simulations better. So why not move to this new tool? So Stonyfield said, that sounds great. Let's do that. And basically, I just wanted to go over quickly how it works. So basically, SAP lives all of our what we call production orders. It's basically a recipe for every one of the yogurts that we make. It says how much ingredient is needed to make X amount of yogurt. And what lives in there is how many cups, how many lids, how many boxes, anything to get a milk to a gallon of finished product that lives in SAP. And so this is an example of a production order for one of our Yo Toddler brands. It has all of our ingredients. And basically that already lives in SAP. So by building a sort of attachment onto SAP called our carbon tool, integrating it with the emission factors, all of the end-of-life information, all of our logistics information, our energy usage information, everything that would be included in a life cycle assessment, and have that data be as vetted and accurate as possible. We build the capability for every order. When we press a button in our production floor to say, make this yogurt, it goes through the carbon tool and we instantly have a carbon footprint of that product. And so we use that, we can build reports internally on what we're doing for our carbon footprint by product, by SKU, by plants, by product family, kind of any level of product carbon detail we want to have. It didn't come automatically, of course. We had a process to get us from A to B. And that started with training. Group Denim basically had to deploy teams of trainers to go to every country and teach the staff what the tool will do, who they will need to help them populate it. Everything around, from if you get a data alert to build a report to what information you need to put in for each of your packaging. And then it was up to the CBUs to collect the data. So remember that before we really only had data collected on in one kind of carbon-friendly place, 7 or 12 of our SKUs, and now we're looking at all of our SKUs. We have about 100, 120 different SKUs within Stonyfield and Brown Cow, which is one of our brands as well, Brown Cow, based in Antioch, California. And we had to do a lot of information gathering, which definitely took some time because you have to populate the tool with all of background data before it will work. Then testing and gap analysis. So does new kind of result footprint match what our old footprint was? Where is data missing? Where does it look like something isn't calculating correctly, et cetera? And then in between that, Stonyfield identified that we really need an internal system to how we are managing all this data. It can't really be just one person's job. So we developed a workflow tool. And for those of you who might not be familiar with a workflow tool, because I certainly went when I started using one 2 years ago, it's basically a system that's automated through our email system that just automatically sends messages and tracks messages, tell you, hey, we need some logistics data. It needs to go to this person, and you need to upload this, and click this button when you're done. Or the carbon tool needs some upstream data for one of our packaging pieces or a fruit, and that a different person whose area of expertise that is. So an automated tracking system. Really, we had to train our own staff. So we did kind of a train-the-trainer approach where we had a few go and get trained by Danone, and then we needed to kind of train our own staff as well once we trained everything that we needed to be doing for our own specific business unit. Because even though we're all part of the group Danone, every business unit is a little bit different. Finally, we have what we call go live, which means everything's done and everything's good and it's ready to go. I also wanted to share with you, though, our lessons learned as we go along, because I suspect we're not going to be the first company in history to do this, and I think it's really useful because we're kind of the first and most advanced user, even within Danone, of our carbon tool, because we were one of the first companies to sign on. I think it's really important to share the lessons that we learned from doing this. First of all, is tailor training to your own staff. I think anytime someone's looking for an enterprise product carbon footprinting software, it's easy for the software developer or the main office of a company to say, this is what you need to do, this is how it works, this is what you should be doing, but every single business is different. So train-the-trainer approach was critical for us to really deploy this successfully within Stonyfield. The second thing about data is really data quality is more important than just having a piece of data to go with an item to fill in a space. So if I don't know how far my vanilla is traveling to get to Stonyfield, it doesn't make sense for me to just put in some random number to get an upstream emission factor for that ingredient. It really makes sense for the long term to focus on the quality of the data. Is it accurate? Is it reflective reality before quantity? It's not good enough to have a carbon footprint if your data is not correct. When doing a gap analysis, and really throughout the process, working with internal subjects efforts is crucial, because just because you're within a company doesn't know everything about about your logistics department, for example. It could be going to a distribution center 500 miles away before it really ships out, or it could be going, a train somewhere before it leaves. So you have to really work with your internal subject experts to get the full picture of the reality of your product life. But extra time, I think that's a really good rule of thumb anytime you're working with data. And also don't be afraid to question methodology. These lifecycle assessment tools are always, created by experts, but sometimes even what seems to be correct might not be for your business case. The reason we developed our workflow tool was because we wanted to be able to track when data was changed, or when a mistake was corrected, or when anything related to data happened in our tool. So you really need to account for making sure that that is tracked in any kind of LCA software that you would use. And as you're training your staff, it's very important to but also to get buy-in from management, because in some cases, if you're giving a new responsibility to a staff member, they probably need to get support from management as well. As I said, as you go live, make sure your reporting and tracking system in place, and ongoing support is critical. That's one of the benefits of having a tool that Danone developed internally, and have a network of carbon masters in other business units, is that I can just call Danone. I can always call one of the other carbon masters and say, hey, something doesn't look right. Can I check this with you? Now, I wanted to explain how we have deployed our system in Stonyfield. We basically have the fifth person, who is me, the carbon master. And I have basically the working relationships and data relationships between business solutions, our master data engineering department, logistics department, procurement, and all of this is managed throughout our workflow. I also have a relationship with Danone so that I can discuss anything related to the methodology of the tool, or we're bringing a product in, how do we account for this, or we're having a product made somewhere else, and we're bringing it in, how do we deal with that? So that's critical. And then every month, basically, I also do a report to our executive team on our carbon footprint, which I will, I'll go over in a minute. So really, this reaches, we call it silo smashing platform. It's really the only tool within Stonyfield that requires the involvement of almost someone from every area of the business, and then also gets reported up to the executive team. We've established an internal carbon KPI, which I'll talk about in a second. Just to give you a quick look inside the tool, this is actually a screenshot of the first page of the tool. So basically, we go into it's an online web-based tool. You can go in, and on the left side there, under unitary emissions factors, I can go into our emissions factor of a substance just to check, is my polypropylene emissions factor up to date with the most current research in the U.S. I can go into a specific component. I can look into our 6-ounce cup and say, is the upstream mileage correct here? Am I reflecting that we changed a supplier and the mileage from the supplier to Stonyfield changed? So the aspects of a life cycle data are reflected on the left side there. And those green boxes are data that only Danone controls, so that we have control and some security around our emissions. So a business unit can't just go into the tool and decide that polypropylene suddenly has a smaller carbon footprint than it did when Danone said it. So there is some security built into this, which is also nice. And on the right-hand side, I can go through and I can look at documentation. If I want to generate some reports in Excel, I can go through a tool called MicroStrategy. And any kind of report from the SKU level for a certain component to every single product we have in all of our businesses. I can just kind of quickly click through and get that report. I can look at a dashboard. I can pull up a list of alerts where data is missing. There's really a lot of functionality built in here. And I can check the user guide. I can click to the carbon user community, so I can ask my counted other organizations questions about anything I need to do. I've referred a lot to the life cycle of our product. I wanted to give you an outline of what is really included there. It's basically 95% of a product footprint is included in our life cycle footprint, which is in accordance with the ISO guidelines. So that purple dotted line is our system boundary, and outside of the boundary is an A box below. So we have all of our fruit and vegetable production, which we model in a tool that Danone has provided to basically take the characteristics of a farm and convert that to a carbon footprint, taking into account everything from how far a truck has to travel from the field to a processing center, to what type of processing the fruit goes through, and then what's added to a fruit to become an ingredient in our yogurt. And the same for milk production. We have a milk tool, was developed between France, between Danone and the French Agricultural Institute, to characteristics of a milk farm, a dairy, and turn that into a carbon footprint. Packaging production comes from international data such as Events and Class Europe and some other U.S. sources. It takes into account things like, the pig food that we generate on site and the energy that we generate on site in our anaerobic digester. So that's our system boundary, just as a reference for you. Here's an example of how we might look at our specific product. We have here one of our biggest sellers, which is a 32-ounce low-fat vanilla yogurt, and in each of those sort of categories along the top, materials, production, logistics, retail and home, end of life, we can pull up the percentage of our footprint that belongs in each category. So you can see that milk production is over 30% of our footprint, that particular product, and that's typical. Milk is our biggest impact. Dairy ingredients such as cream or milk powder adds another 20%. So really, over half of the footprint of this particular product comes from milk, which is what we would expect. But this is the type of thing we can look at to identify our hot spots and prioritize what we want to try to focus our reduction efforts around. Now, before that, we have developed an internal carbon KPI, that's key performance indicator. We always tracked energy usage as a key performance indicator, but since we implemented this new tool, we've decided to turn energy KPI into a greenhouse gas KPI and add other pieces of our footprint in it. So basically right now, our carbon KPI includes our office energy usage, our losses, so anything that happens in the plant that would increase, decrease our inability to use a certain ingredient or a finished product that we can't use, our plant energy usage, and our shipping, so all of the fuel usage that we use to ship our products. And in the future, we're planning to add in basically every category, but for our first try here, we decided to focus on a smaller piece of it just to see how it would work, how it works when we report every month against the KPI. And every month, I can basically take this report to our executive team and explain July was due to their electric usage because of the temperature side was higher. And then I can turn that into a recommendation. So I can say, we need to make sure that we're being as efficient as possible, closing doors, making sure that people aren't using air conditioning too much, setting limits, that kind of thing. Same with losses. We can say that we had an issue with, a certain amount of product on the floor in the plant, and our losses went up because of that. So basically, this gives us the opportunity to go through every piece of our carbon footprint, identify the reason for why it went up or down, and also an action that we can use to mitigate that impact. So probably a lot of you are wondering, what is our carbon footprint? The footprint of a Stonyfield product is about 1,570 grams of CO2 per kilogram of product, or 1.6 kilos of CO2 per kilogram of product. Just for reference, a kilogram of product is about the size of one of our 32-ounce containers. You'll see here as well that Group Zone has identified an area of their footprint which they call their direct responsibility, which essentially is everything except for ingredients and the end-of-life treatment of a product. So that's changing, just so you know. We're moving forward. Everything in our carbon footprint is going to be included in our scope of direct responsibility. And frankly, Stonyfield has always believed that every single piece of our footprint is a direct responsibility. But I just wanted to explain that since it was noted there. That a footprint is really only as good as what it's as impacts basically. So I pulled this from an environmental working group report just to give you an idea of where yogurt is compared to other food products. Obviously, I can't speak to the accuracy of this particular report, but I think it's useful just in terms of ballpark. So, Untitled product down there is somewhere between dried beans and tomatoes. I took some information from published reports from bananas, Tropicana orange juice, and Coca-Cola, dropped those in as well. And then Greek yogurt is a big newest craze in yogurt. Sure, many of you have seen it on the grocery store shelves. The reason that the footprint of Greek yogurt is so high is because it uses about 3 times as much milk to make one Greek yogurt as it does to make one regular yogurt. It's actually much closer to cheese than it is a yogurt. So with all of this behind us, we think, okay, what are we going to do with this in the future? Looking ahead, what we hope is to be able to pass this information on to our consumers and to customers as well, to the stores that carry our products. Because the good for us is obviously we're not subject to any country-level laws regarding disclosure of environmental information about our products. But we believe that it could be a powerful tool for transparency, and consumers have a right to know about the environmental impacts of their buying choices. So we hope to someday be able to communicate on our website, at least, if not potentially on package in many, many years, what the footprint is of our products. We're also going to be expanding, as I said, our internal KPI to the rest of our footprint. We will be integrating a water footprint as well, which Group Danone has been working on diligently over the past couple of years as well. Carbon was only the first phase. Water will be coming soon. Connecting this information to our financials as well. And we all know that in the corporate world, sometimes information makes more sense when it's connected to financials. So a way to do that, maybe something along the lines of what Puma has done recently with their environmental P&L. We'll develop a sales tool. It depends. Really, we're just in the first year of using this tool, and we're constantly throwing out ideas of what we can do with this in the future. And just when we do it too, I wanted to mention that when we do this, while we believe that it's part of our environmental mission. We believe that you can't make without measuring, and measuring is a huge part of taking responsibility. So we believe that this is one way that we are taking responsibility and leading the way for other companies to do this in the future. We love the idea of using this as a diagnosis tool. So finding problems in our process and trying to just focus on mitigating that carbon issue in a particular area. As I said, it's a silo smashing platform, so it helps flatten our business because of everyone involved and around one issue. And of course, when we have a promise to our consumers that we're going to do what we can every day to be as environmentally sustainable as possible, and so this really helps us do that. And quickly, once again, I'll run over the lessons learned and additional lessons as well. If you are looking for a tool to do something similar to what we've done, I would mention that a regulatory tool is not the same as a management tool. So a tool that is meant to just report a number for the purposes of reporting a number is not the same as a tool that would allow you to drill down into different focus areas and trace the impact, trace the origin of your impact. That's a long way of saying that just one solution doesn't fit every business. That you need to plan the purpose of your data early on. So when you are setting a wash in data, you want to have a purpose for what you're going to do with that data. Work with internal subject experts during your implementation, as I said. Tailor training to your own staff. Budget extra time. Validate that your reporting and tracking systems are in place. Focus on data quality before quantity, and always, always, always don't be afraid to question methodology. If something doesn't make sense, it might really, truly not make sense. And finally, to say that carbon footprinting is part of an evolution. We are taking the next step toward becoming as responsible and transparent about our environmental impacts as possible. So we are now, it's not perfect yet, but we are working toward it as perfect tool as we possibly can, and becoming as transparent a company as we possibly can. That's it for the information I wanted to pass on with these slides, but I'm more than happy to take your questions now, and if need be, talk with you offline.
Okay, thank you, Mary, for the presentation. So we're going to jump into a quick Q&A session. So for all of our attendees out there, please type any questions that you might have into the Q&A box on the bottom right-hand side of your screen. So, all right, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Mary, so we have a question here. Could you please call the most effective micro-strategies of your company to reduce emissions? I'm going to put it into the chat box for you as well.
Thanks.
I'm assuming it just means what were the most effective, or what so far do you think has worked best within the, I guess, strategies that you've implemented so far?
That's a really good question, because every area of the business, logistics is a completely different picture than packaging, which is a completely different picture than milk. I would say packaging has been very effective for us, because we've moved to plant-based packaging in 2 of our lines. So we use PLA, polylactic acid, which is made from organic corn, in our 4-ounce line. We are Yo Baby, Yo Toddler, things in a small 4-ounce multi-pack. And so use HDPE, which is made from sugar cane. There's the farm in Brazil where we get our sugar. Our sugar cane makes HDPE, which is our high-density polyethylene, which is our smoothie bottles, from basically sugar cane waste. It's not using the actual sugar. It's using the waste from the sugar cane plant itself to make that packaging. Those are typically very effective because they're sort of change out from one product to another, from one type of packaging to the exact same type of packaging but with another material. And with the HDPE, we reduced our footprint of our bottles by 65%, which with the PA we reduced the footprint of our multi-packs by 50%. So those are very, very effective. Also been very effective in our logistics department by trying to implement the shipping of our product using rail as much as possible. Rail is far more efficient than a typical 18-wheeler truck. So where we can work with our customers to get an extra day or two to deliver our product to them and get them to agree to ship it rail, that's extremely effective in reducing our footprint.
Okay, thank you, Mary, for that. For the next question, everything you use, produce, waste, recycle, I guess maybe against, of course, the electronic industry. So what's your policies on waste and recyclability within your products?
So we actually have a couple of different ways to approach this. One is within our plant. In our plant operations, we have this year reached zero waste as a plant. That means our in streams are cardboard, paper, plastics, aluminum for our foil lids, and those are main streams of waste the plant and reached over 90% recycle rate there, which according to a lot of the zero waste coalitions can mean you can say you're zero waste if you're 91% or over 90%. We're driving for zero. We don't really believe that you can be zero, but not really be zero. So we very high recycling rate in our plant. Now also, of course, there's what we produce. We produce all our plastics are recyclable right now, except for the PLA. We've been doing a trial with a PLA recycler for the past 6 months to try to work out some sort of system where the PLA can be recycled. A lot of recyclers just simply don't take that material right now, which is too bad. PLA is not perfect, but it's the next step towards sustainable packaging, and so it's a small trade-off that we had to make. And finally, we use recycled materials. All of the cardboard that we use is recyclable. So that's been our approach over the years. Hope this is a question.
Thanks, Mary. Okay, so for the next question, how many carbon masters are there within Stonyfield and within Downham, and in total, how many would you say you would need to form a critical mass? Any thoughts on that?
That's a really good question. So the approach of Carbon Master came when Danone decided to do a carbon footprint across his company. So it came back in 2007. They basically said, if we want to make this program a success, we have to have one person in each business unit that is responsible for mobilizing their individual business unit and reporting the data and developing a community. So the one carbon master in every business unit, but that carbon master might not be their only position. So for example, I'm the carbon master and that's my job title, but I'm also a project manager and I work on many other things around sustainability within Stonyfield. Some other business unit might be the head of quality and manufacturing, but they were given the role of carbon master because they might be closest to the data that they need. So it depends within the company where the carbon master sits, but there is just one per company. There are over 100 carbon masters, and so there's one every business unit that it has. And a critical mass, I think, depends on how active the carbon masters are. So there might be a subgroup there is a subgroup of carbon masters in North America that between the U.S., the U.S., Canada, and some in Brazil and Argentina as well, in South America, who are very active. There are other carbon masters who are not as active, or not as full with other carbon masters. So the critical mass is really, it helps. We have, about 5 of us who can constantly kind of go back and forth and ask each other questions if we need to. But that's just a small group within a larger group. So I think it really depends on how active each person in each business unit is versus any kind of set number for a critical mass.
Okay, thank you for that. So I'm going to ask just, I think, maybe a few more questions since we're getting close to time. So how long did this footprinting process take, and what departments were involved to make it happen?
That's a good question, and something I neglected to explain. I apologize. It took out originally the transition between our Excel model to our SAP model was to take about 80 man days. It ended up taking much longer. I would say it's taken us at least 9 transition, and not just migrating data, but also making sure that all of the data is correct and that we can include everything that we need to. So, for example, on Cow business unit, been on the same logistics tracking system as our Stonyfield unit. So we kind of did a good way of tracking the data for logistics for that one business unit. So we had to wait a long time to get that system in place. So it's not necessarily that you need someone full-time for 9 months. It's that, or for the particular system, but it goes and stops and starts. So it's a scary number, but it has taken a while. And also keep in mind, Danone is still perfecting the system as we were shifting onto it. So there were a lot of changes within Danone as well to make this system as good as it is now. How many people? I would say we have about 5 people within Stonyfield that really have a day-to-day, or rather week-to-week role, including me in the system. Our other business units have more because of their size. So Stonyfield is actually very small compared to other business units. So the number of people involved depends also on the size of the company.
Okay. I actually think we're going to have to end with that specific question today. I know we have a few left over. Mary, would you be happy to address these through possibly email after, take it offline after this event?
Absolutely. More than happy to connect with anyone via email.
Okay. So, with that done, I'm going to go ahead and close it up for the day. I'd like to thank all of the attendees for participating today, for all of your questions, comments, and ideas. And a really big thanks to you, Mary, for your great presentation. It's been really great having you here and kind of explore concepts that you went through this 9-month process. So to all of our attendees, the recording and relevant info will be posted shortly on the supply chain group on 2 Degrees. We'll also be happy to address your questions that were left over through email, as Mary so kindly said. With that all done and out of the way, I'd like to thank everyone once again and have a wonderful day.